somebody, some ramshackle house somewhere. And she was drunk, okay? And of course, at that time, me and my siblings could tell you within a half a beer how much alcohol my mom had had by how drunk she was. We were so familiar with it. If I would come home from school sometimes and my sisters wouldn't be there. I've got 2 brothers and 6 sisters, and my sisters wouldn't be there. And my mom, the hell? Anyway, my mom would have picked them up, I guess, from school or whatever. I'm 13. I guess I'm old enough to take care of myself. I don't have to be nobody there. And I would call the local bar, knowing the number by heart. And many, many times I heard my mom say, in the background, "If that's my kid, tell him I'm not here." When I say we had no food, as an example, I literally mean no food. I don't mean like, we had macaroni and cheese, but we didn't have anything to eat with it, or we only had vegetables or whatever. We would literally have no food in the house, but there would be a 6-pack of beer in the fridge or a bottle of whiskey in the cupboard. And like I said, the beatings continued, and then finally they stopped. I was around 13 or so. I remember it was during whatever year it was during the later part of the summer. It was like a month or so before school. And she was drunk, and she said something, and I was getting big enough to the point where I was, starting to mouth back to her a little bit, okay? And this time she slapped me full in the face. I mean, hard enough to rock my head, and got tears to my eyes or whatever. And I turned and just stood at her and didn't say anything. And she could see in my eyes that it was going to be the last time for one of us. And she got a little bit of guilty look on her face, turned around and walked away, went and laid down on her bed and passed the fuck out. She woke up a couple hours later, sober, as I knew she would. Didn't remember any of it, and I wasn't going to bring it up, okay? The last thing I needed was, for her to try to do another beating. Physically, I wasn't beaten after that. The mental abuse, the emotional abuse, the trauma, everything else still continued. So now, again, this is going to be difficult for me, but it may be too difficult for some people. So if you don't want to watch this, if you want to walk away, if you want to mute the button for a little while, that's up to you. Okay, so this particular topic, I'm going to raise my hand, okay, and when I lower my hand is when I'm going to start talking about it. When I'm done talking about it, I'll raise my hand again, 10 seconds or whatever, okay, so that'll give you like an indication where, you can cut the video, cut the audio or whatever. Okay, so okay, it doesn't take that long. So the first time I tried to kill myself, I was almost 14. My sperm donor, my dad, I'm just going to call him my dad for, had a house in our hometown where, because we were getting more and more kids, he had remodeled the basement. So it was my bedroom, 2 of my sisters were in the same bedroom, and then there was 3 bedrooms upstairs, and the rest of the kids were in there, okay? And he had built it, so he was in the process of building it, okay? So that it had the 2x4s for the frame for the walls, but it hadn't had any drywall or anything put up there yet, okay? And let me clip this just a second and tell you that every single time that I've tried this, that time and afterwards, circumstances have made it so that I was able to be here. I never left a note. I never called anybody. I didn't, yell out for anybody. A couple times there were people in the house. I was going to do it. That was it. Why leave a note if I'm going to do it? So you know how, okay, so the door frame is like this, okay, so there's 2 2x4s running up and down, sealing the floor, okay, and then the door frame has one on the bottom, and there's a 2x4 running across the top. Now, he had not yet put up, you can put up little braces of 2x4s underneath that board. If he had, I would have died. But he hadn't. So I tied a rope, measured it pretty much, tied a rope to the middle of the 2x4, stepped on a chair, put the rope around my neck, put my hands into a looped belt that I had made behind my back, and stepped off the chair. I don't really remember anything other than, you know, like a few seconds, maybe tops, of stepping off the chair. Until I woke up on the floor. He had a cement floor in the basement because he hadn't put carpet or anything down yet. In a pool of blood. I had hit this corner right here in my chin, and I still have a chip in the bone. Busted the chin open or whatever, okay. And so I'm sure probably a combination of my weight, and I mean, I wasn't real heavy, it was, 13, I was skinny as shit. But that, and maybe my body jerking or whatever, broke that board loose, because if I hadn't, I would have died. And I didn't care. A lot of people, when they die this way, whether it's this or a particular method, different method, they don't want to. They actively don't want to die. What they want is the pain to stop. Physical pain, mental anguish, whatever. They want it to stop. And that was the case with me to some extent, okay? I was also apathetic. Why the fuck should I live? Nobody loves me, nobody cares about me, nobody listens to me. And I know a lot of teenagers say that, okay, but, with the abuse that was still going on, mentally, verbally, okay, not physical, what the hell do I have to live for? So I cleaned up the blood, put the board back together, okay. I was living with my dad at that point because the courts had taken this away from my mom because of her alcoholism. So I went over to my mom's that weekend. She had me for visitation. And we went to the bar, of course. And one of her bar friends asked her what the burn was around my neck, and I tried to pull it off. And I said, well, I was carrying a coil of rope downstairs, one part happened to be around my neck, and I tripped, and that's what caused it. And I said also that I hit my head on the floor and knocked me out, and so that's why the rope stayed there as long as it did to cause that burn. And they bought it, whether or not they actually believed it or not, I don't know, but to my 13-year-old eyes, they bought it. The abuse is part of that, okay, the reason that I did that, okay. At that time, I am ADHD, as I mentioned in the actual title for the show. I have to change that, but I am ADHD. I am autistic. I have chronic depression. I'm always depressed. The joke that I've used with my friends before, haha, funny, is that in the first Avengers, when they're all like getting together and Captain America decides he's going to become the leader of the team, and he's telling people to do different things, or like he tells the Hulk go smash, whatever. Okay, but prior to that, when I was going to say Superman, when Iron Man is flying around the corner of the building and he brings that big giant fucking robot snake thing. I love the movie, by the way. He says, "I'm bringing a party to you," and Black Widow's like, "I don't think that's a party." David Ruffalo, as Bruce Banner, starts walking towards the thing, and Captain America says, "Dr. Banner, I think now would be a time to get angry." And he says, "That's my secret, Captain. I'm always angry. I'm always depressed, 24/7. Have been all of my life. Will continue to be all of my life until the day I die. Nothing's going to change that. You can mask it with certain medications. They could give me Prozac, and a heavy level of Prozac, and I run around smiling all the time and whatever. It's not going to go away." One of the best descriptions I ever heard of it is that you get a tennis ball canister, okay, and you put a tennis ball inside it, and you put the cap on it, okay. Tennis ball can roll back and forth, but otherwise it can't get out. Okay, you can wrap pretty ribbons around that container. You can put glue on it with glitter. You can spray paint it, pretty paints, whatever. None of that is going to remove that ball from the container. It's always going to be there. So, I have to find ways to cope with my depression. It's always going to be there every single day. I do get therapy, and I've told my therapist more than once that I'm never happy, ever. I am content sometimes, depending upon the day and whatever. Okay, and I am on certain medications. Okay, I was going to say psychic drugs, psychoactive drugs and whatever. Okay, but I'm never happy. I get to be content, and that's the best I can be. I have also likened the depression to the spiral of a depression to be like in a spaceship going around a black hole. And so my saying with this is that life is like going around a black hole. It constantly sucks. It's just some places it sucks less than others. I will spiral down closer to the black hole. I still don't. I still get occasionally terminal thoughts. That's also never going to go away. It's like smoking a cigarette. You still have that. I quit 21 years ago, but I still have that mental habit to some extent. So with all of this, I went into the military right after high school. Ms. says everything went weird and I had repression. I lost the chat thread. Took me deputies. That's okay, Ms. So I was talking about my depression. I covered my story of my first attempt at self-unaliving. If you want to watch that later, you can watch that later. I went into the military. At the time, part of it was, I was still in the cult, okay, the Christian nationalist cult, okay. So I believed in the truth, in the American way and blah, 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 and whatever, okay. And I fully believed in it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not denigrating my level of belief in that, or denigrating is the word I want, denying my level of belief in that. But I also joined because I had no real skills for a job, had no ability to get, in this small town to get into a college, and so I entered the military, risking life and limb, to get a little bit of schooling, and whatever, and a job. And I was in the military, United States Air Force for 4 years, 78 to 82, at the end of the Cold War, near the end of the Cold War, I should say. And there were a couple times in the military that I tried it. Those particular times were an overdose of pills. I don't remember what they were, but I do remember that each time my body said, oh no, hell with this, and threw it up. Because if it had kept it down, I would have died. Didn't tell anybody, didn't message anybody, didn't call anybody. Why bother? Nobody's going to give a shit anyway. So after I got out of the military, I tooled around the United States for a while. I have been in or lived in like 22 states. I've been in, when I was in the service, which is when I went overseas to Germany. I was stationed in Germany. I've also been to Paris for New Year's. I've been to Holland for the Tulip Festival. I did a TDY in Italy, Gioia del Colle, Italy, which is down by the heel of the boot. I went on a 3-day pub tour in England and Ireland. And let me tell you, I love Ireland, by the way. Anybody who knows me knows that, my heritage is here, or not my heritage. My nationality is here. My heart is over there. Okay. But I was starting to heavily drink then. Despite like a lot of children from alcoholics do. Oh, I'm never going to do that. I'm never going to do what my parents did. And Bacardi 151 and Coke was my drink. That's 75% pure alcohol. And it wasn't a light drink, and it wasn't just one. I have a huge, super high tolerance for alcohol. I'm sure I got it from my parents genetically. Ms. says I'm never happy either. I don't think I ever have been. Yeah. And I think with my parents, aside from the fact that they also grew up in alcoholic households, and they also were abused, that cycle, trying to go through, that with that high tolerance for alcohol, they felt that they could handle it until they got physically addicted. Both of them were. My dad was able to hide it more, was able to go to church, was able to work, whatever, while he was abusive, while he was drunk, and a drunk, I should say, and then also abusive to all of the kids and my stepmother. broke her nose a few times, give her black eyes, whatever. But you'd be surprised, guys would, what a lot of makeup will cover. I've tried a few times after I got out of the service for self-harm, terminal self-harm. And again, all the times after that have been with pills. Okay. One time in particular, I was living back here in Michigan. That would probably be the early 2000s. And I was looking for alcohol. I was going to pull a Karen Ann Quinlan. If you don't know who that is, look it up. It's Karen Ann. And then the last name is spelled Q-U-I-L-A-N. Look it up. So I was going to do a bunch of downers and alcohol and take myself out. I couldn't find the alcohol. I thought I had some, but I didn't. And I didn't have any money to go get some. So, again, I took the overdose, and again, my body puked it up. And that's what saved me, was that I didn't have the money for the alcohol, because I wouldn't be here today. And I'm not going to get into statistics or any of that shit, okay, because y'all can look that up. The numbers aren't what counts. It's people that counts, okay? So there are literally millions of people that have stories just like mine, or worse. I know some people, more than one, who were suffered abuse so bad that they can't have children. And they're dear friends of mine. One in particular, they were in the military. The branch and the person and whatever doesn't matter, but they were in the military, and I've told them many times, I got your six. And if you're in the military, ever were in the military, or you know somebody was, you know what that means. So again, I'm not alone, okay? Not just the gender issues or whatever, okay? But so growing up, I had my gender issues, okay? Undiagnosed bipolar disorder 2, undiagnosed chronic depression, undiagnosed SAD, which stands for seasonal affective disorder. It's kind of sort of cabin fever, depression. It gets worse in the winter. Fucking sucks. Or you're trying to get free or whatever, okay? I worked at a local hospital here for 4 years, okay? And pay-wise, for the area was, not bad, okay? Sliding scales, and there are some places where the